16-hour days and 100-degree heat. 6 months in Indonesia, building water treatment facilities. I'd been living in a compound where the power went out twice a day, and the nearest decent coffee was 3 hours away. I pulled into my driveway. At 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, exhausted, 2,000 unread emails. All I wanted was to sleep in my own bed, and there was a building that hadn't been there when I left. Large, professional. Overhead garage doors, floodlights illuminating the back of my property. A sign near the entrance. Riverside Meadows Community Workshop. On my land, 1,200 square feet. $87,000 in construction, concrete foundation, electrical service, professional siding. The HOA had built it while I was overseas in property that was clearly, unambiguously mine according to my 2018 survey. The HOA president said I'd approved it, said they had a letter with my name, said the land had always been common area, and I should donate it to avoid problems. I gave them 30 days to remove it. They offered me $15,000 to keep an $87,000 building on my property. They thought I'd accept it. Thought I'd take their settlement and walk away. They were wrong. By the time the excavator tore it down in 4 hours, and the judge awarded me $135,000. It was too late to undo what came next. Before we get started, let me know where you're watching from today, and be sure to hit like and subscribe for more great stories like this. I'd been in Indonesia for 6 months, building a water treatment facility in a rural province outside Jakarta, 16-hour days and 100-degree heat. Managing a crew of 40 while communicating through a translator, living in a compound where the power went out twice a day, and the nearest decent coffee was 3 hours away. I was exhausted. My back hurt from sleeping on a thin mattress for half a year. My phone had 2,000 unread emails I'd been ignoring. All I wanted was to sleep in my own bed, eat food that didn't come wrapped in plastic, and not hear construction noise for at least 48 hours. I pulled into my driveway at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday in late September, and saw a building that hadn't been there when I left. A large building, overhead garage doors, floodlights illuminating the back of my property, and a professional sign mounted near the entrance, Riverside Meadows Community Workshop. On my property, I sat in my car for a full minute, staring at it, wondering if jet lag was making me hallucinate. I rubbed my eyes, checked my GPS to make sure I'd driven to the right address, looked at my house. Same blue shutters. Same cracked driveway I'd been meaning to repair for 2 years, then back to the building. Still there? I'd built water treatment facilities in 3 countries. I knew what $80,000 to $100,000 in construction. Looked like this wasn't some shed someone threw up in a weekend. This was a permanent structure with electrical service, concrete foundation, professional siding. On my property, someone had spent serious money building this. The question was, who authorized it, and how did they think they'd get away with it? I got out of my car and walked toward it, my phone flashlight cutting through the darkness. The closer I got, the more details I noticed. Security lights on motion. Sensors that clicked on as I approached. Concrete pad foundation with proper drainage. Electrical service running from a utility pole. Even outdoor electrical outlets on the side of the building. I walked around the entire structure. 42 feet by 28 feet, pasted off, about 1,200 square feet. New landscaping around the perimeter. A gravel path leading from the street. 2 overhead garage doors. Windows along the side. This was professional work. Expensive work. I pulled out my phone and started taking photos. Every angle. The sign, the foundation. The property line markers I vaguely remembered from when I bought the house 8 years ago. Wooden stakes that were now at least 15 feet on the wrong side of this building. A light came on in my neighbor's house. I saw a curtain move. Someone was watching me. But they didn't come out. They didn't wave. The curtain dropped back into place. I walked back to my front door and found an orange envelope taped to it. HOA letterhead. I pulled it down and opened it under my porch light. Notice. Construction of community amenity on common area parcel 7B, proceeding as approved by HOA. Board vote on May 15th. Completion expected July 2026. For questions, contact HOA President Brenda Holloway. The notice was dated 4 months ago, May 20th, 3 weeks after I'd left for Indonesia. I stood there reading it 3 times. Common Area Parcel 7B. That's what they were calling my land. My property that I'd paid for, that was on my deed, that I'd owned for 8 years, I unlocked my door, dropped my suitcases in the entryway, and went straight to my home office. My filing cabinet was exactly where I'd left it. I pulled out the folder labeled House Purchase 2018 and found my property survey from when I'd bought the place. The survey showed clear boundary lines. My lot was 0.6 acres, corner lot on Riverside Drive and Meadow Lane. The back section, the wooded par, extended 50 feet past where that garage was now sitting. That garage wasn't on common area. It was on my land. Clearly, unambiguously on my private property. I didn't sleep that night. Sat at my kitchen table reviewing documents, taking notes, and getting angrier by the hour. At 8 a.m. the next morning, I walked 3 houses down to 2847 Riverside Drive, the largest house in the neighborhood. Brenda Holloway's house. I rang the doorbell. Brenda answered after about 30 seconds, wearing workout clothes and holding a coffee mug. She was in her late 50s, blonde hair and a precise bob, the kind of put-together appearance that screamed, "I run things around here. Can I help you?" She didn't recognize me. I'd only been to 2 HOA meetings in 8 years. I traveled too much to get involved in neighborhood politics. I'm Michael Chen. I live at 2795 Riverside. I just got back from overseas last night. Ain't. Expression shifted slightly. Recognition, then something else. Caution. Oh, Michael, welcome back. There's a building on my property. A garage. With a sign that says Community Workshop. Yes, the Community Workshop. It's a wonderful addition to the neighborhood. We're very excited about it. It's on my land. Brenda smiled like she was talking to a confused child. No, it's on HOA common land. That back section of your lot has always been common area. It's been unused for years. The community voted to build a workshop there to add value to the neighborhood. That's not HOA land. That's my property. I have the plat map right here. She disappeared for a moment and came back with a folder. She pulled out a map and showed it to me. It showed my lot, but the back 50 feet were shaded differently and labeled Common Area 7B. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo of my original survey. This is the survey from when I bought the house. That entire section is my private property. Brenda barely glanced at my phone. Surveys can be wrong. They're just estimates. The neighborhood has treated that area as common land for 20 years. Adverse possession applies. Adverse possession requires 18 years of open, continuous, and hostile use in Colorado. You can't just decide to claim Michael. She cut me off with the tone of someone correcting a slow student. I understand you work overseas and haven't been involved in neighborhood matters, but those of us who actually live here full-time understand how these things work. My husband is an attorney. We consulted with professionals. Everything was done properly. I was never contacted about this. We sent notice to all residents in good standing. Perhaps if you participated more in community affairs, you'd have received it. My jaw tightened. I pay my HOA dues on autopay. I'm a member in good standing. That doesn't give you the right to build on my land. The garage was built on HOA property. It's been approved, permitted, and completed. It's done. I'm getting a professional survey done. If it confirms that garage is on my property, you're removing it. Brenda's smile didn't waver. You're welcome. To waste your money on a survey? The garage isn't going anywhere. Have a nice day, Michael. She closed the door. I stood there for a moment, then walked back to my house. I spent the next 2 hours on my laptop, pulling up the HOA online portal, where meeting minutes were posted. I found the May 15th meeting minutes. Motion brought by President Holloway to construct community workshop garage on unused common land, parcel 7B. Rear section of 2795 Riverside Drive property. Structure to provide community storage workshop. Space and amenity value. Construction budget, $87,000. Motion seconded by Vice President Murphy. Vote, 6-0, approved unanimously. I stopped reading and went back to the beginning. Dale Murphy Construction, LLC, awarded the $87,000 contract. Dale Murphy, same name as the vice president who'd voted to approve the project. I open a new tab and search Dale Murphy Construction, Colorado. The company website loaded. Dale Murphy, owner-operator, 25 years experience. Licensed contractor specializing in residential and community construction. I clicked on the About page. There was Dale's photo, late 50s, wearing a contractor's vest, standing in front of a garage with Murphy Construction emblazoned on the side. Same Dale Murphy, who was VP of the HOA board? I sat back in my chair. The VP of the HOA had voted to approve an $87,000 construction project. Then his own company had been awarded the contract to build it, on land that, according to my survey, wasn't even HOA property. This wasn't just trespassing. This was fraud. I kept reading the meeting minutes. There were 3 more meetings with construction updates. June 12th, construction of community workshop proceeding on schedule. Foundation poured, framing in progress. July 10th, community workshop 75% complete. Electrical and roofing finished. Expected completion, August 15th. August 20th, community workshop completed.
Grand opening scheduled for September 1st. All
Residents welcome to utilize the space. They'd built an entire building on my land in 4 months while I was overseas. And according to the minutes, they'd never sent me a single email, never tried to call, never attempted to contact me despite having my information on file. They'd done this on purpose. They'd waited until I was gone. I called the HOA management phone number listed on the website. It rang 4 times before Brenda answered. Riverside Meadows, HOA, Brenda speaking. Brenda, this is Michael Chen. I'm formally requesting an emergency board meeting to discuss the garage built on my property. This matter is settled, Michael. The garage is on HOA property. There's nothing to discuss. The garage is on my private land. I have documentation proving it. I'm requesting a meeting. Your request is denied. If you want to bring this up, you can wait for the next quarterly meeting in December. I'm getting a professional survey done. When it confirms that garage is on my land, you're removing it. You're welcome to waste your money. The garage isn't going anywhere. Goodbye, Michael. She hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone, then opened my contacts and searched for surveying companies. I called the first one with good reviews. Mountain Westland Surveying. This is Patricia. I need a boundary survey done as soon as possible. There's a structure that may have been built on my property without my permission. We can help with that. When do you need it done? As soon as possible. This week if you can. Let me check the schedule. I heard clicking on a keyboard. We have an opening Saturday morning. How's 9 a.m.? Perfect. The cost for a detailed boundary survey is $1,800. We'll mark all corners. Provide a certified map and document any encroachments. Sound good? Yes, thank you. After I hung up, I spent the next hour documenting everything. I took dozens of photos of the garage from every angle. I photographed my original property survey. I downloaded and saved all the HOA meeting minutes. I took screenshots of Dale Murphy's company website and the board roster showing him as VP. I was creating a file. Engineers document everything, it's how we think. I had a feeling I was going to need every piece of evidence I could gather. That evening around 6 p.m., there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find an elderly man I recognized from 2 houses down. Jim something? I'd talked to him maybe twice in 8 years. Michael, right? Welcome back. Thanks, Jim. He looked uncomfortable. Can I talk to you for a minute? Sure, come in. He sat in my living room. Jim was in his 70s, thin, wearing a cardigan despite the warm evening. I need to tell you something about that garage, he said. I voted against it. I leaned forward. What happened? 4 months ago, Brenda brought the proposal to the board meeting. Said there was an unused piece of common land behind your property. That could be developed into a community workshop. I said I thought that looked like your land, not HOA land. She said she'd verified with county records that it was common area. It's not. It's my property. I figured. Anyway, 3 of us voted against the project in that first meeting. Me, Janet Reeves, and Tom Caldwell. We didn't think it was appropriate to build on land adjacent to your property without talking to you first. Brenda said you'd been contacted and had approved it. I was never contacted. Jim nodded. That's what I suspected. A week later, Brenda called another vote. She brought Dale Murphy with her. He's the VP and a contractor. Dale gave this whole presentation about how the garage would increase property values by 10 to 15%. How it would make Riverside Meadows more competitive with other neighborhoods. How we'd be foolish not to approve it. And the vote changed? Not immediately. Jeanette was still hesitant. She kept saying it seemed wrong to build something so close to your property line without talking to you. Then Brenda pulled out a letter. What letter? She claimed it was from you, dated from before you left for Indonesia. Said you'd been informed of the project during a prior meeting and had expressed support for community improvements. The letter had your name typed at the bottom. I felt my chest tighten. I never wrote that letter. I was never at a meeting where this was discussed, I figured, but Janet and Tom believed it. They thought you'd approve the project. That's when they changed their votes. Brenda knew exactly what buttons to push. Did you ever see the letter? No. She just held it up and read from it. Then she filed it away in her folder. After Jim left, I added forged letter with my name to my growing list of problems. I pulled out my phone and called my brother David. He was an attorney in California and at Colorado, but he'd know what I was dealing with. Need to talk when you have time? HOA built a garage on my land while I was overseas. It's going to get ugly. He texted back 3 minutes later. Call me now. I called. David answered on the first ring. Tell me everything. I did. The whole story. The garage. The HOA meeting minutes. Brenda's dismissiveness. Dale's conflict of interest. The forged letter Jim had mentioned. The survey scheduled for Saturday. When I finished, David was quiet for a moment. Mike, this is bad. They committed trespass, they built without your consent, and they did it while you were overseas, which could be argued as intentional. But here's what you need to understand. Even though you're right, this is going to be expensive and time-consuming to fight. I know. No, I mean really expensive. You're talking attorneys, court fees, possibly years of litigation. And HOAs fight dirty because they use everyone's dues to pay for lawyers. You're funding the fight against yourself. So what do? Get that survey Saturday. Make sure it shows what you think it shows. Then we build a paper trail. You send formal written notice via certified mail to Brenda, to Dale Murphy, and to every board member individually. You cite the survey, you cite Colorado trespass law. You give them 30 days to remove the structure and restore your land to original condition, and if they refuse, then you file in county court for trespass, unjust enrichment, and possibly fraud if we can prove they knew it was your land. But here's the thing, Mike's, they're going to claim good faith. They're going to say they genuinely believed it was common area. They're going to say the plat map showed it as HOA property, even though my survey from 2018 clearly shows it's not. They'll say your survey was wrong. They'll get their own surveyor, who will conveniently find ambiguities. They'll drag this out for 2 years if they can. Why? Because every month that garage sits there, it becomes more permanent. Judges don't like ordering expensive structures torn down. The longer this goes, the more likely you get a settlement offer. They pay you $20,000, garage stays, that's there. Endgame. So I either fight for years or accept their lowball settlement. Pretty much, I'm sorry, Mike. I know it's not fair. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my porch, looking at that garage lit up by its security floodlights. $87,000. That's what they'd spent building it. $50,000. That's what David said it might cost me to fight them. I thought about my brothers. Advice. About how judges don't like ordering expensive structures torn down. About how the HOA would drag this out for years. About how I could probably settle for $20,000 and walk away. Let them keep the garage. Take the money. Move on with my life. It would be easier. I looked at my property survey on my phone. The boundary lines were clear. The garage was sitting 15 feet inside my property, not on the line, not in some disputed zone. It's clearly, unambiguously. On my land, they'd built it while I was overseas. They'd voted without contacting me. They'd forged a letter with my name. They'd given an $87,000 contract to the VP who voted to approve it. And now, Brenda was telling me it was my fault for not being more involved in community affairs. I'm an engineer. I solve problems. I build things. I don't back down when the numbers are clear and the facts are on my side. Saturday morning, I'd get my professional survey. Saturday afternoon, I'd have proof. And then Brenda Holloway was going to learn that building on someone's land without permission has consequences, even if those consequences take 2 years and $50,000 to enforce. The surveyor's name was Patricia Chen, no relation. But I took it as a good sign. She arrived at 9 a.m. Saturday morning in a truck with Mountain Westland surveying on the side, carrying what looked like a high-tech tripod and a tablet computer. Michael Chen, that's me. Patricia Chen. Let's figure out where your property actually ends. She spent 4 hours methodically working her way around my lot. High-precision GPS equipment, laser measurements, cross-referencing with county records on her tablet. She placed bright orange stakes at each corner of my property, then traced the boundary lines. I watched from my porch as she worked her way toward the garage. When she reached the back section where the garage stood, she stopped, looked at her equipment, then looked at the building. She took more measurements, checked her tablet, measured. Again, then she walked back to where I was standing. Want to see the results? We sat at my kitchen table. She spread out a newly printed survey map with bright boundary lines marked in red. This is your property line, she said, tracing the red line with her finger. And this is where the garage sits. The garage wasn't just partially on my property, it was entirely on my property. Every single square foot, according to Patricia's measurements, my property line extended 52 feet past where the HOA's map had claimed it ended. The garage sat 15 feet inside my property line at the nearest point, 23 feet at the farthest. There's no ambiguity here, Patricia said. This structure is completely on your land. Whoever told you this was common area was either incompetent or lying. Can they claim adverse possession? They said the neighborhood's been treating that area as common land for 20 years. Patricia shook her head. Not in 6 months. Colorado requires 18 years of open, continuous, and hostile use for adverse possession. You've owned the property for 8 years, right? Even if the previous owners allowed occasional access to that wooded area, that's not continuous. Hostile use. And the HOA would need to prove they've been using it exclusively for 18 years. They can't. They built this garage 4 months ago. She handed me the official survey document, embossed, notarized, legally binding. This is your ammunition. Anyone questions your property line, you show them this. This document holds up in court. After Patricia left, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the survey map. The evidence was undeniable. The garage was on my land, not partially, not arguably, completely. I took photos of the survey, scanned the official document, and sent everything to my brother David. Then I called Brenda Holloway. Brenda, this is Michael Chen. I have the professional survey results. The garage is entirely on my property. I'm requesting an emergency board meeting to discuss immediate removal. There was a long pause. We'll need to have our surveyor verify your results. Patricia Chen is a licensed Colorado surveyor. Her work is legally binding. Your map was wrong. Discuss this at the next quarterly meeting in December. No, you'll discuss this at an emergency meeting this week, or I'm filing a lawsuit on Monday morning. Your choice. Another pause. Fine, tomorrow night, 7 p.m., Community Center. She hung up. Sunday evening at 7 p.m. I walked into the Riverside Meadows Community Center carrying a folder with my survey, my original property deed, photos, and my growing list of evidence. 6 board members sat at a table in front. Brenda Holloway, Dale Murphy, Janet Reeves, Tom Caldwell, Barbara Chen, and Marcus Williams. About 15 residents sat in the audience, curious about the emergency meeting. Brenda called the meeting to order. We're We're here to discuss Michael Chen's concerns about the community workshop. Michael, you have the floor. Stood and walked to the front. I laid out the survey map on the table in front of the board. This is a professional boundary survey completed yesterday by Mountain West Land Surveying. It shows that the garage you built is entirely on my private property. Not partially, entirely. The structure sits 15 to 23 feet inside my property line. I pointed to the boundary markers on the map. The HOA claimed this area was Common Land Parcel 7B. It's not. It never was. It's private property that I've owned for 8 years. Dale Murphy leaned forward. Even if your survey shows it's technically on your property, we spent $87,000 on that garage. The community voted for it. It provides value to the neighborhood. You can't just demand we tear it down. You built on my land without my permission. That's trespassing and unauthorized construction. Yes, I absolutely can demand you remove it. Janet Reeves spoke up, her voice uncertain. Michael, I understand you're upset, but is there any way we can work out an arrangement? Maybe you could donate that section of land to the HOA. We could update the plat maps, make it official common area, and everyone moves forward. I looked at her directly. You want me to donate land so you can keep a building you built illegally on my property? How is that fair? Would avoid a costly dispute. The dispute exists because you built on my land. I'm not donating anything, Brenda cut in, her voice sharp. Let's all calm down. This is clearly a complicated situation. We'll have our attorney review the survey and provide guidance on how to proceed. Your attorney is your husband, Richard Holloway. He has a conflict of interest. Richard is perfectly qualified to advise. The board is married to you. You authorized this project. He's not going to give unbiased advice. Tom Caldwell, one of the board members who'd initially voted against the garage, spoke up. Brenda, I think we need to take this seriously. If Michael's survey is accurate and we built on his land, we have a legal problem. Brenda's face flushed. The board voted in good faith based on the plat maps we had. We followed proper procedures. I pulled out my phone and showed the photos I'd taken of the forged letter. Did proper procedures include forging a letter with my name, claiming I'd approved this project? The room went silent. I never wrote that letter. I was never at a meeting where this was discussed, but according to Jim Patterson, Brenda showed the board a letter supposedly from me expressing support for community improvements. That letter was used to convince board members to change their votes. Janet's face went pale. Brenda, is that true? I don't recall the specific details of every document. You showed us a letter, Tom said, his voice hard. You said Michael had approved the project. I may have misunderstood. You forged a letter with my name to manipulate a vote. Kept my voice level. That's fraud. Dale Murphy stood up. This is getting out of hand. We built a garage for the community. Michael's being unreasonable. Unreasonable? I turned to face him. You're the VP of this board. You voted to approve an $87,000 construction project? Then your company, Dale Murphy Construction, got the contract. You profited from a vote. You participated in? That's a conflict of interest. I disclosed my business, did you? Show me where in the meeting minutes you disclosed that you'd be bidding on the contract before the vote. Dale sat back down, jaw tight. Brenda tried to regain control. We'll have Richard review the legal situation and provide recommendations. This meeting is adjourned. You have 30 days, I said clearly. Remove the garage from my property within 30 days, or I'll pursue all legal remedies available to me. I left before Brenda could respond. Monday morning, a FedEx envelope arrived at my door, legal letterhead, Holloway and Associates Law Firm. I opened it and read Richard Holloway's letter. Dear Mr. Chen, this firm represents the Riverside Meadows HOA in response to your demands regarding the community workshop structure. The HOA acted in good faith based on historical plat maps showing the subject area as common land. The structure was properly permitted, professionally constructed, and adds significant value to your property and the community, demanding removal of an $87,000. Structure would constitute waste and unreasonable damages. The HOA is prepared to negotiate fair compensation for an easement, allowing the structure to remain. However, should you pursue removal of the structure or file litigation, HOA will be forced to countersue for the full cost of the garage at $87,000, plus damages for your unreasonable conduct and interference with community property. We trust you will consider the reasonable path forward. Sincerely, Richard Holloway-esque. I read it twice, then forwarded it to my brother David with the message. Can they actually do this? David called me 20 minutes later. They're bluffing. They have no legal basis to sue you for the cost of a structure they built on your land without permission. This is pure intimidation. So I ignore it? No, you respond formally. But here's the reality. Mike fighting this will cost you $20,000 to $30,000 in attorney fees, even though you'll win. They know that. They're hoping you'll take a lowball settlement just to avoid the hassle. What do you think I should do? That's up to you. But if you want to fight this, I can refer you to a property attorney in Denver who handles this kind of case. Let me think about it. That evening, logged into the Riverside Meadows Neighbors Facebook group, something I'd never bothered with before. Brenda had posted 2 hours earlier. Unfortunate situation. A longtime resident returning from overseas is demanding removal of our new community workshop due to a property line dispute. This garage cost $87,000 of OUR dues and provides value to all homeowners. Some people care more about technicalities than community, hoping we can find a reasonable resolution. The comments were brutal. Who demands removal of a community amenity over a property line? So selfish. He's been gone for 6 months and suddenly cares about his property? The garage is beautiful and useful. This guy needs to get over himself. Can't we just pay him something and move on? Only a few people pushed back. Jim Patterson. The garage is on his private land. The HOA didn't ask permission. That's not a technicality. Someone named Sarah Martinez. Wait, did the HOA build on someone's private property without permission? That's not a technicality. That's illegal. I didn't respond to the post. Engaging on social media wouldn't help. Instead, I drafted a formal letter. I addressed it to all 6 board members individually and sent it via certified mail. To the Riverside Meadows HOA Board of Directors. Attached is a certified boundary survey conducted by Mountain West Land Surveying. On September 23, 2026, the survey confirms that the structure you refer to as the community workshop is entirely located on my private property at 2795 Riverside Drive. The structure was built without my knowledge, consent, or permission while I was overseas for work. I was never contacted despite the HOA having my email address and emergency contact information on file. Colorado law is clear. Construction on private property without the owner's consent constitutes trespassing and unauthorized improvement. I demand that you remove the structure from my property and restore the land to its original condition within 30 days of receipt of this letter. If you fail to do so, I will pursue all legal remedies available, including civil suit for trespassing and removal of unauthorized structures, structures of all costs associated with removal damages. For diminution of property value, legal fees, and court costs, additionally. I have filed a complaint with the county regarding permits obtained under false pretenses. Deadline for voluntary removal, October 28, 2026. Sincerely, Michael Chen. I also filed a complaint with the county building department attaching my survey and copies of the permits the HOA had obtained. Wednesday morning, county inspector named Dennis Rodriguez showed up at my door. Mr. Chen, I'm here about your complaint regarding the garage structure. Come in. I can show you everything. Dennis spent an hour reviewing my survey, walking the property line, and examining the garage. Then he pulled up the original permit applications on his tablet. These permits were filed claiming the structure would be built on HOA. Common Area Parcel 7B. If your survey is correct and this is actually private property, the permits were obtained under false pretenses. The survey is correct. I'm going to issue a stop-use order until the ownership dispute is resolved. The HOA can't use the garage until this is sorted out legally. Thank you. Dennis printed out an official notice and walked over to the garage. He posted it on the door. Stop-use order. This structure may not be used or occupied until ownership and permitting issues are resolved. Violation subject to fines and criminal penalties. Within an hour, I saw 3 different neighbors walk up to the garage, read the notice, and leave looking confused. My phone rang that evening, Brenda. Michael, posting that stop use order is causing problems for the entire community. People have things stored in there. They're using it for projects. Then you shouldn't have built it on my property. We're trying to work with you, no. You're trying to bully me into accepting your illegal construction? That's not the same thing. She hung up Thursday evening. There was a knock on my door. Brenda stood there with a man in his 60s wearing an expensive suit. Richard Holloway, the attorney husband. Michael, this is my husband, Richard. He'd like to have a reasonable conversation about resolving this situation. I stepped outside onto the porch. I didn't invite them in. Richard extended his hand. I didn't. Shake it. Mr. Chen, I think we can find a solution that works for everyone. The HOA is prepared to offer you $15,000 for a permanent easement, allowing the garage to remain on that section of land. You get compensated. The community keeps the amenity. Everyone wins. You built an $87,000 structure on my land without permission. Now you want to pay me $15,000 to let you keep it? It's fair market value for the easement. No. Remove the structure. Brenda's voice rose. Michael, you're being selfish. This garage benefits the whole community. Don't you care about your neighbors? I care about my property rights. You built on my land. Remove it. Richard's tone hardened. If you remove that garage yourself, the HOA will sue you for destruction of property. The structure costs $87,000. You'll be liable for every penny. It's my property. I'll do what I want with my property. We're offering a reasonable settlement. Get off my land. You have 25 days to remove the garage. After that, I'm removing it myself. Brenda's face went red. You wouldn't dare try me. They left. I went back inside and called 3 demolition companies, getting quotes for garage removal. The average was $12,000 for complete demolition and hauling. I looked at my calendar. October 28th, 25 days away. The HOA showed no signs of removing the garage. Despite the stop-use order, I'd seen at least 6 residents going in and out over the past 2 days. They were ignoring the county's order, using the space like nothing was wrong. I forwarded the demolition quotes to my brother David. If they don't remove it by the deadline, I'm having it demolished. What's my legal exposure? David called me immediately. Mike, are you sure you want to do this? Once you tear it down, there's no going back. They're not removing it. They think I'm bluffing. You might be opening yourself up to a lawsuit for removing an unauthorized structure from my own property. Let them sue. I have a survey. I have documentation they were told to remove it. I have proof they built without my permission. It's going to get ugly. It already is ugly. I just don't know it yet. I booked the demolition company for October 29th, day after the deadline. If the garage was still standing on October 28th, it wouldn't be standing on October 29th, Brenda. Holloway wanted to see if I was bluffing. She was about to find out I wasn't. Day 29 of my 30-day deadline. The garage was still there. Not only was it still there, residents were using it. I'd watched from my kitchen window as 5 different people came and went throughout the day. Tools, bikes, storage boxes. Someone was running a table saw inside. I could hear it from my house. The county's stop-use order was still posted on the door. They were ignoring it. The HOA was calling my bluff. They thought I wouldn't actually do anything. That eventually, I'd get tired, take their lowball settlement, and move on with my life. They were wrong. I picked up my phone and called Rocky Mountain Demolition, the company that had given me the best quote 2 weeks ago. Rocky Mountain Demo, this is Travis. Hi Travis, this is Michael Chen. I got a quote from you 2 weeks ago for demolishing a garage structure. 1,200 square feet, wood frame construction. Yeah, I remember. You ready to move forward? How fast can you do it? If it's the job I'm thinking of, we can knock that down in a day. Demo and Holloway, everything gone by, end of business. When do you need it done? Day after tomorrow. Can you have a crew there first thing in the morning? Sure. 7:30 work? Perfect. All right, I'll send you a contract to sign. Deposit is half up front, $6,000. Balance due when the job's complete. I'll have the deposit to you by tonight. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and drafted one final letter. Short, direct, unemotional. To the Riverside Meadows HOA board, the 30-day deadline for removal of the structure on my property expires tomorrow, October 28th, 2026, at 11:59 p.m. As of this writing, the structure remains on my property. Residents continue to use it despite the county's stop-use order. If the structure is not removed by 8 a.m. on October 29th, 2026, I will have it professionally demolished at your expense. All costs will be added to my damages claim. This is your final notice. Michael Chen. I printed 6 copies, put them in envelopes, and drove to the post office to send them certified mail to each board member. Then I drove to Brenda's house and hand-delivered a copy directly to her door. She answered wearing yoga, pants, and a look of irritation. What now, Michael? I handed her the envelope. Final notice. The deadline is tomorrow. Removed by 8 a.m. the day after, I'm removing it myself. She didn't even open the envelope. You're bluffing. Wouldn't dare. Try me. My husband has already drafted a lawsuit. If you touch that garage, we'll sue you for destruction of property. You'll lose everything. I'm removing an unauthorized structure from my land. See you in court if that's what you want. I walked back to my car. Brenda stood in her doorway, holding the envelope, her face red. I spent that evening reviewing my documentation one more time. Survey, property deed, photos of the garage, county stop-use order, all 6 certified mail receipts from my 30-day notice. Documentation that the HOA had been using the garage. Despite the stop-use order, everything was in order. I went to bed early. Tomorrow was going to be a long day. I woke up at 6 a.m. on October 29th, made coffee, sat on my porch watching the street. At 7:30 a.m. exactly, a large truck turned onto Riverside Drive. Rocky Mountain Demolition painted on the side. Behind it, a flatbed trailer. Carrying an excavator, the trucks pulled up to the curb near the garage. 5 men got out. Travis, the foreman I'd spoken to on the phone, and his crew neighbors started coming out of their houses. First just curious looks, then people standing on their lawns watching. Travis walked over to me. Michael Chen? That's me. All right, let's make sure we're on the same page. Is that garage structure back there? You're the property owner. You have authorization to remove it, and you want it completely demolished and hauled away today. Correct. I have all the documentation. I handed him my folder. Survey showing the garage on my land. Property deed, the 30-day notice letters. County stop-use order showing the structure was unpermitted. Travis reviewed everything carefully, then nodded. Looks good. We'll get started. His crew began unloading equipment. The excavator rumbled to life. At 7:50 a.m., I heard tires screeching. Brenda's black Mercedes came flying down the street and jerked to a stop in front of my house. She jumped out, not even bothering to close her door. "Stop!" she screamed, running toward the demolition crew. "You can't do this." I walked over calmly. "This is my property, Brenda. This is an unpermitted structure. I gave you 30 days notice. We'll sue you for every penny. You'll lose your house. You'll lose everything. You built on my land without permission. Sue me for removing my property from my land. See how that goes." She turned to the demolition crew. Travis was directing his team, marking the demolition zone with orange cones. "I'm ordering you to stop." Brenda's voice was shrill. "I'm the HOA president. The HOA will sue your company if you proceed." Travis looked at me. "Sir." I pulled out my survey and property deed again. "This is my land. That structure is unpermitted and was built without my consent. You have my full authorization to proceed." Travis turned to Brenda. "Ma'am, we have written authorization from the property owner. We've reviewed all the documentation. This is his property. Please step back for your own safety. This is community property. You're destroying community property. According to the survey, it's on private property. You'll need to take this up with him through legal channels. We're proceeding with the job." Brenda pulled out her phone and dialed. Richard, get down here now. He's actually doing it. At 8 o'clock, the excavator moved into position. A crowd had formed, now at least 20 neighbors standing in the street watching. Some looked confused. Some looked angry. Jim Patterson, the elderly neighbor who'd warned me about what happened, gave me a supportive nod. The excavator's arms swung back and forward. The steel claw tore into the side of the garage. Brenda screamed. The wall crumpled. The excavator pulled back, dragging vinyl siding and wooden framing with it. The crew moved in with sledgehammers and crowbars, working systematically to bring down the structure. Brenda was on her phone again. Police. I need police at 2795 Riverside Drive. Someone is destroying community property. Stood on my porch, arms crossed, watching. At 8:30 a.m., 2 police cars pulled up. Officers Martinez and Bryant got out. Brenda ran over to them. Officers, thank God. He's destroying HOA property. Arrest him. Officer Martinez looked at the demolition in progress, then walked over to me. Sir, what's going on here? I handed him my documentation folder. I'm Michael Chen. I own this property. That garage was built on my land without my permission while I was overseas. I've had a professional survey done confirming it's entirely on my private property. I gave the HOA 30 days written notice to remove it. They refused. I'm removing it myself. Martinez reviewed the survey, the deed, the 30-day notice letters, with certified mail receipts. Officer, can you show me where the property line is? I walked him over to the orange survey stakes Patricia had placed. We measured the distance from the stakes to what was left of the garage, still clearly inside my property line. Martinez handed my documents back. Everything looks in order. You have documentation. You gave notice. This is your property. Walked back to Brenda. Ma'am, according to the survey and property deed, this is his land. He has the right to remove structures from his property. This is a civil dispute, not a criminal matter. Civil dispute. He's destroying an $87,000 garage that he claims was built on his property without permission. If you disagree, you'll need to resolve this through the courts. There's no crime being committed here. This is outrageous. You're just going to let him, ma'am. We can't stop a property owner from removing structures from his own land. If you have a legal claim, file it with the court. The officers left. Brenda stood there, shaking with rage as the demolition continued. More neighbors had gathered now. I heard fragments of conversations. Wait, he's destroying a community garage. Why? Because the HOA built it on his private land without asking. That can't be legal. It's not. That's why he's tearing it down. A woman I didn't recognize walked over to me. You're destroying a community amenity over a property line. That's incredibly selfish. Before I could respond, Jim Patterson stepped forward. The HOA built that garage on Michael's private land while he was overseas. They claimed it was common area. It wasn't. They never asked his permission. He gave them a month to remove it. They didn't. But the community spent $87,000 on a building they built on someone else's land. That's not Michael's problem. That's the HOA's problem. Another neighbor, a man in his 40s, joined in, so he was just supposed to let them keep a building on his land. Apparently some people think so, Jim said, looking at the woman hood. Called me selfish. She walked away, looking uncomfortable. As the excavator continued its work, Brenda became increasingly unhinged. This neighborhood is going to sue you for $87,000, she screamed at me from across the property. You're going to pay for every penny of this? You built on my land, Brenda. You're destroying property values. Nobody's going to want to live here after this. You did that when you built an unauthorized structure on private property. My husband will make sure you never win. We'll take you to court. We'll take your house. I kept my voice calm. You had 30 days. You chose not to act. We were negotiating. You offered me $15,000 for land you stole and a garage you built without permission. That's not negotiating. It's insulting. By noon, the garage was gone. The excavator had torn it down to the foundation. The crew had broken up the concrete pad, loaded everything onto trucks' vinyl siding, wooden framing, roofing materials, concrete chunks, the professional sign that said Riverside Meadows Community Workshop. All of it was gone. The land was cleared back to bare earth and grass. The orange survey stakes still marked my property boundaries. Travis walked over, wiping sweat from his forehead. All done. We'll haul this to the landfill and be back with your final invoice by end of day. Thank you. Brenda was still there, sitting in her car. Crying, the crowd of neighbors had mostly dispersed, talking in small groups as they walked back to their houses. I walked the property line, checking to make sure everything was cleared. The garage that had been there for 4 months was gone. My land looked the way it had when I'd left for Indonesia, wooded, undeveloped. Mine. I went inside and made myself lunch. At 4 p.m. there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find a process server standing there with a clipboard. Michael Chen. Yes, you've been served. He handed me a thick envelope and left. I opened it. Legal documents from Holloway & Associates law firm. Complaint for DAMH, the Riverside Meadows Homeowners Association. B.S. Michael Chun. The plaintiff seeks damages in the amount of $127,000 as follows. $87,000 for destruction of community property garage structure, $40,000 for emotional distress, diminution of property values, and loss of community, amenity, legal fees, and court costs. Defendant willfully and maliciously destroyed a structure that provided significant value to the community despite good faith offers to negotiate a reasonable resolution. The entire complaint was 23 pages of accusations, legal theories, and demands for damages. I photographed every page, then texted my brother David. They're suing. Time to countersue? David called immediately. How much are they asking for? $127,000 plus legal fees.
Jesus.
Okay, I'm referring you to a property attorney in Denver. Her name's Amanda Rodriguez. She's handled cases like this before. Expensive, but she's good. How expensive? It's probably $300 an hour. This case could run $30,000 to $50,000 depending on how long it takes. I looked out my window at the cleared land where the garage had been. Set up the meeting. I'm not backing down. That evening, I sat on my porch with a beer, looking at the property that was finally mine again. The HOA had built on my land without permission. They'd forged a letter with my name. They'd given an $87,000 contract to their own VP. They'd ignored a stop-use order. They'd refused to remove the structure despite 30 days notice. And now they were suing me for removing it, Brenda. Holloway thought she could bully me into submission with lawsuits and threats. She was about to learn what happens when an engineer with documentation fights back. Amanda Rodriguez's law office was in downtown Denver. 20th floor of a glass building with a view of the mountains. Her paralegal led me to a conference room where Amanda was already reviewing the file I'd sent. She was in her mid-40s, sharp-eyed, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Mr. Chen, I've reviewed your documentation. This is one of the most clear-cut property rights cases I've seen in 15 years of practice. But they're suing me for $127,000. They're suing you because they're desperate. They know they're wrong. They're hoping you'll settle just to make it go away. She spread out papers on the conference table. Here's what we're going to do. We're not just defending against their lawsuit. We're countersuing for trespass, unjust enrichment, fraud, and malicious prosecution. Malicious prosecution? They're suing you for removing an unauthorized structure from your own property. That's frivolous and retaliatory. We can argue there, abusing the legal system to punish you for asserting your property rights. What am I looking at in terms of cost? My retainer is $15,000 up front. This case will probably run $30,000 to $50,000 total, depending on how long they drag it out. But when we win, and we will win, we'll seek to recover all your legal fees from the HOA. I thought about that. $50,000. That's what my brother David had warned me this would cost. Let's do it. Amanda smiled. Good, first thing we do is file our counterclaim, then we start discovery. I want every email, every text message, every board meeting recording. We're going to find out exactly who knew this was your property and who decided to build anyway. 2 weeks later, both lawsuits were officially filed. Case 1. Riverside Meadows HOA versus Michael Chen. $127,000 in damages for destruction of community property. Case 2. Michael Chen versus Riverside Meadows HOA. Brenda Holloway individually and Dale Murphy individually trespass, unjust enrichment, fraud, malicious prosecution, seeking $87,000 in restitution plus $100,000 in punitive damages, plus legal fees. I'd sued Brenda and Dale individually, not just the HOA, them personally. Amanda had been clear about the strategy. If board members are facing personal liability, they get scared. They start turning on each other. That's when we get the truth. The discovery phase began in December. Amanda filed demands for documents. All HOA meeting minutes, emails between board members, text messages discussing the garage, financial records, showing payments to Dale's company, records of any communication with me about the project. The HOA's attorney Richard Holloway tried to fight it. He filed motions claiming the requests were overly broad and harassment. The judge disagreed. The defendant built a structure on the plaintiff's property. Discovery about how that decision was made is clearly relevant. Motion denied. HOA will produce all requested documents within 30 days. The documents arrived in mid-January, 14 boxes of papers and 3 hard drives of digital files. Amanda's team spent 2 weeks reviewing everything. Then she called me. Michael, you need to come to my office. We found something. I drove to Denver that afternoon. Amanda had papers spread across her conference table. We found the emails between Brenda and Dale before the first board vote. She handed me a printed email chain from Brenda Holloway to Dale Murphy. Date: April 28, 2026. Subject: Chen property. Dale: I've been looking at that wooded section behind Michael Chen's house. He's been overseas for 3 weeks and will be gone for months. Perfect timing to move forward with the community garage project we discussed. Can you give me a cost estimate? From Dale Murphy to Brenda Holloway. Date: April 29, 2026. Chen property. I can build a 1,200 square feet garage for $87,000. But are we sure that's HOA land? Looks like it might be on Chen's property based on the survey stakes I saw. From Brenda Holloway to Dale Murphy. Date: April 29, 2026. Chen property. Don't worry about the survey stakes. Have a plat map showing it as common area. Chen won't be back until September. By then it's built and he'll have to deal with it. The board will support us, especially if you emphasize property values in your presentation. I read it 3 times. She knew. Dale questioned whether it was HOA land, and Brenda told him not to worry about it. It gets better. Amanda handed me another email from Brenda Holloway to Dale Murphy. Date: May 22nd, 2026. Subject: Board vote update. FYI, Jim Patterson, Janet Reeves, and Tom Caldwell voted against the garage at yesterday's meeting. They're concerned about building near Chen's property without his approval. I'm scheduling a revote next week. I'll handle Janet and Tom. You work on the property value angle. Once it's approved, move fast on construction. Want this done before Chen gets back. She knew the board had concerns. Manipulated a revote. She explicitly wanted it done before you returned. Amanda pulled out one more document. And this is the smoking gun. It was an email from May 25th, 3 days before the second board vote. From Brenda Holloway to Richard Holloway. Date: May 25th, 2026. Subject: Chen approval letter. Richard: Can you draft a letter on Michael Chen's behalf, supporting community improvements? Make it generic enough to be believable, but specific enough to convince the board he's okay with the garage project. I'll present it at next week's vote. From Richard Holloway to Brenda Holloway. Date: May 25th, 2026. Chen approval letter. Brenda: I can't fabricate a letter from a homeowner. That's forgery. If Chen complains, this could blow up on us. From Brenda Holloway to Richard Holloway. Date: May 25th, 2026. Chen approval letter. He won't complain. He's never here. Just write something I can use. There was no response from Richard. After that, but according to Jim Patterson's testimony, Brenda had presented a letter at the May 28th board meeting claiming I'd approved the project. Richard refused to write it in that email, I said, but Brenda presented a letter anyway. which means she either forged it herself or convinced Richard to do it off the record. Either way, it's fraud. Amanda leaned back in her chair.
Michael.
These emails prove Brenda knew there were questions about the property boundaries. They prove she manipulated the board vote. They prove she deliberately scheduled construction while you were overseas. And they prove she fabricated documentation to convince board members you'd approved the project. What does this mean for the case? It means we destroy them at trial. More importantly, it means the other board members are going to panic. Janet Reeves, Tom Caldwell, Jim Patterson, they were manipulated. They voted based on fraudulent information. Once they see these emails, they're going to turn on Brenda. She was right. 2 weeks later, I received an email from Tom Caldwell, one of the board members who'd initially voted against the garage. Michael, I need to talk to you. What Brenda did was wrong. Several of us had no idea she'd fabricated that letter or that she knew there were boundary questions. I'm meeting with the other board members to discuss removing Brenda as president. Can we talk? I forwarded the email to Amanda. She called Tom directly. 3 days later, Tom, Janet Reeves, and Jim Patterson all gave depositions for my case. They testified that Brenda had misled them, that they'd never seen my original property survey, that they'd been told I'd approved the project. Janet's deposition was particularly damning. Attorney Amanda Rodriguez. Did you have any concerns about building near Mr. Chen's property without speaking to him directly? Janet Reeves. Yes. I said at the first meeting that we should contact Michael before proceeding. Brenda said he'd been informed and supported community improvements. She showed us a letter supposedly from him. Rodriguez. Did you ever see Michael Chen's signature on that letter? Reeves. No. His name was typed at the bottom. Right? It was from an email he'd sent. Rodriguez. Did you ask to see the original email? Reeves. No. I trusted Brenda. She was the president. I thought she was telling the truth. The HOA membership started turning on the board. In February, a special election was called. Brenda Dale and the board member who'd consistently supported the Marcus Williams were all removed from their positions. Tom Caldwell was elected the new president. Tom's first act was to send me a formal letter. On behalf of the newly elected Riverside Meadows HOA board, I want to apologize for the actions of the previous leadership. The garage should never have been built on your property. The board was misled by false information. We do not support the lawsuit filed against you and are working to resolve this matter appropriately, but the lawsuit didn't go away. Brenda and Richard were still pushing forward personally, even though the HOA itself had backed off. In March, Amanda received a call from Richard Holloway. He wants to settle, Amanda told me. He's offering to drop the HOA's lawsuit if you drop your counterclaim. What about my legal fees? About the $12,000 I spent on demolition. He says the HOA will pay you $25,000 to cover those costs. And Brenda and Dale? Are they admitting any wrongdoing? No. Richard wants this to go away quietly. No admission of liability, no finding of fault. Just mutual dismissal and a payment to you. I thought about it. $25,000 would cover my demolition costs and about half my legal fees. I'd still be out $20,000 to $30,000, but I'd avoid a trial. What do you recommend? Amanda was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I think we should reject it. The emails prove fraud. Brenda and Dale knew they were building on your land. They manipulated the board. They fabricated documents. If we go to trial, we'll win, and we'll get your full legal fees plus punitive damages. But there's risk. There's always risk in trial. But this case, this is as strong as they come. The judge is going to be pissed when she sees those emails. How much do you think we'd win at trial? Your actual damages demolition costs. Legal fees are about $42,000. I think we can get that plus punitive damages of $50,000 to $100,000. The judge will want to send a message that HOA board members can't just build on people's property. Without consequences, reject the settlement. I want a trial. Amanda smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. Richard Holloway called Amanda directly after she rejected the settlement offer. Your client is making a mistake or offering a reasonable resolution. Your client built an $87,000 structure on my client's property based on fraudulent information. That's not a dispute. That's a crime. The HOA acted in good faith. The emails say otherwise. See you in court, Richard. 2 weeks later, Richard filed a motion to withdraw as the HOA's attorney. Conflict of interest, his wife was a defendant. Judge approved it. The HOA hired a new attorney, Patricia Brennan, from a firm in Colorado Springs. She reviewed the case for 1 week, then called Amanda. Ms. Rodriguez, I've reviewed the file. The previous board's actions were indefensible. My client, the current HOA board, wants to settle this appropriately. The new settlement offer came in April. Cho admits the garage was built on Michael Chun's private property. Without authorization, HOA pays $50,000 to Michael Chen for demolition costs. Legal fees and damages, Brenda Holloway and Dale Murphy are personally barred from serving on the HOA board for life. No admission of personal liability by Brenda or Dale. They still refuse to admit wrongdoing. Amanda laid it out for me. This is a good offer. The HOA is taking responsibility. You're getting your costs covered. Brenda and Dale are gone from the board permanently, but they're not personally liable? Not under this offer. If you want to hold them personally accountable, we go to trial. But that means more time, more cost, and more risk. I looked at the settlement terms again. $50,000 covered everything: demolition, legal fees so far, and some damages. The HOA was admitting fault. Brenda and Dale couldn't come back, but they weren't paying personally. They weren't admitting they'd committed fraud. They'd just walk away. What are my chances at trial? 90% we win on liability. The question is damages. I think we can get $100,000 to $150,000 total, with most of that coming from Brenda and Dale personally. But there's a chance a conservative judge says, you got your land back, you got your costs covered, that's enough. Hard to predict. I thought about the past 6 months, coming home to find a garage on my land, Brenda's condescension, the Facebook posts calling me selfish, the lawsuit threatening to take my house, the $50,000 I'd spent fighting this. Reject it. I want them to pay personally. I want a judge to say what they did was wrong. Amanda nodded. Then we go to trial. Trial date is July 12th, 3 months from now. That evening, I sat on my porch looking at the spot where the garage had been. The grass was growing back. In a few more months, you wouldn't be able to tell anything had been there. But I'd remember. The neighborhood would remember. And soon, a judge would make sure Brenda Holloway and Dale Murphy remembered too. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Not the dramatic wood-paneled chamber from TV shows. Just a modern county courtroom with fluorescent lights, beige walls, and uncomfortable wooden benches. Judge Patricia Hendricks presided. She was in her early 60s, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed the case file. She had a reputation, Amanda told me, for not tolerating nonsense. This should be a 2-day trial, Amanda had said. Maybe 3 if they drag it out. But the evidence is overwhelming. July 12th, the trial began. Amanda stood to give her opening statement. Your Honor, this case is about property rights. It's the most fundamental right in American law, the right to own land and control what happens on it. Michael Chen owns .6 acres at 2795 Riverside Drive. He purchased it in 2018. He has a deed. He has a survey that land is his. In 2026, while Mr. Chen was overseas for work, the defendants built a 1,200 square foot garage on his land without his knowledge, without his permission, without even attempting to contact him. They spent $87,000 of HOA funds. They claimed the land was common area. It wasn't. That it was private property. Clearly, unambiguously his property. When Mr. Chen discovered what they'd done, he demanded they remove it. They refused. They threatened to sue him. They offered him $15,000 to keep an $87,000 building on his land. When he had it professionally removed after giving them 30 days' notice, they sued him for $127,000. The evidence will show that the defendants knew there were questions about the property boundaries. They knew Mr. Chen was overseas. They knew they were building on disputed land. They did it anyway. And when they got caught, They tried to bully Mr. Chen into accepting their illegal construction. We're asking this court to hold them accountable. Richard Holloway was no longer representing any one conflict of interest. Brenda and Dale had hired separate attorneys. Brenda's attorney, a man named Kenneth Phillips, gave his opening statement. Next, Your Honor, Mrs. Holloway acted in good faith as HOA president. She relied on plat maps provided by the county. She believed she was acting in the community's best interest. Yes, mistakes were made, but this was not fraud. This was not malicious. This was a good faith error in judgment. Mr. Chen could have worked with the HOA to find a reasonable solution. Instead, he unilaterally destroyed an $87,000 structure that benefited the entire community. His actions were disproportionate and punitive. Dale's attorney, Margaret Foster, echoed the same theme. Mr. Murphy is a contractor who was hired to do a job. He built exactly what the HOA asked him to build. He had no reason to question the HOA president's assurances about property ownership. He acted in good faith. Judge Hendricks looked over her glasses at both attorneys. We'll see what the evidence says about good faith. Amanda called me to the stand first. I walked through the entire timeline, leaving for Indonesia in April, coming home in September to find a garage on my property, confronting Brenda, getting the professional survey, the 30-day notice. The demolition. Kenneth Phillips cross-examined me, trying to make me look unreasonable. Mr. Chen, you demolished an $87,000 structure in one morning without giving the HOA any opportunity for further negotiation. I gave them 30 days written notice. They had a month to remove it. They chose not to. Wouldn't a reasonable person have accepted the HOA's offer of compensation rather than destroying community property? It was on my land, and they offered me $15,000 for land they'd stolen and a building they'd built without permission. That's not reasonable compensation. You could have donated that section of land to the HOA. Why would I donate land to legitimize their illegal construction? Judge Hendricks interrupted. Counsel, move on. Amanda called Patricia Chen, the surveyor, next. Patricia explained how surveys work, showed the detailed boundary map, and confirmed that the garage had been entirely on my property 15-2, 23 feet inside my property line. Is there any ambiguity about these boundaries? Amanda asked.
None.
The property lines are clear. The garage was completely on Mr. Chen's private land. Could someone reasonably mistake this for HOA common area? Not if they looked at the actual survey or consulted county records. The plat map the HOA claims to have relied on was either outdated or altered. The current county records clearly show this as private property. Then Amanda introduced the emails. She projected them on a screen for the judge to see. The April 28th email where Brenda identified my property while I was overseas. The April 29th email where Dale questioned whether it was HOA land and Brenda told him not to worry about it. The May 22nd email where Brenda discussed manipulating the board vote. The May 25th email where Brenda asked Richard to fabricate a letter from me. Judge Hendricks read each one carefully, her expression growing harder with each email. Ms. Holloway, the judge said, these emails suggest you knew there were questions about the property boundaries before construction began. Brenda's attorney stood. Your Honor, Mrs. Holloway consulted with what she believed were reliable plat maps. These emails suggest she knew there was a dispute and proceeded anyway. I'll hear her testimony. Brenda took the stand. She looked smaller than I remembered, less confident. She wore a conservative business suit and kept her hands clasped in her lap. Amanda questioned her about the emails. Mrs. Holloway, in your April 28th email, you wrote, he's been overseas for 3 weeks and will be gone for months. Perfect timing to move forward. Why was Mr. Chen being overseas perfect timing? I meant it was a good time to get the project done so it would be ready. When he returned, you didn't think to contact him and ask permission to build on land adjacent to his property? I believed it was common area. But Mr. Murphy questioned whether it was HOA land in his response. You told him don't worry about the survey stakes. Why would you tell him not to worry if you were certain it was common area? Brenda hesitated. I had the plat map showing it as common area. I didn't think the survey stakes were accurate. Did you consult with a professional surveyor before building?
No.
Did you contact Mr. Chen to verify he'd approved the project? No. Did you show the board Mr. Chen's actual property survey from 2018? I didn't have access to that. But you showed them a letter you claimed was from Mr. Chen supporting the project. I presented information that led me to believe he supported community improvements. Amanda pulled out another document. This is a deposition from Janet Reeves. She testified that you showed the board a physical letter with Mr. Chen's name typed at the bottom, claiming he approved the garage project. Where is that letter now? I don't have it. Did you write that letter yourself? Holloway, did you, or did you not, fabricate a letter with Mr. Chen's name to convince the board to approve the garage? Brenda's attorney objected. Judge Hendricks overruled it. Answered the question, Mrs. Holloway. Brenda's voice was barely audible. I may have drafted a letter summarizing what I believed were Mr. Chen's views based on prior conversations. Prior conversations that never happened because Mr. Chen was overseas and you never contacted him? Silence. No further questions. Dale Murphy's testimony was similar. He admitted he'd questioned whether the land was HOA property. He admitted Brenda had told him not to worry about it. Admitted his company had been awarded the $87,000 contract after he'd voted to approve the project as VP of the board. Mr. Ezra Murphy, you're a licensed contractor. You understand property boundaries? Yes. You saw survey stakes that suggested the land might be private property? I mentioned that to Brenda. But you built the garage anyway? She was the HOA president. She said it was common area. I trusted her. You trusted her because your company was getting an $87,000 contract? Margaret Foster objected. Judge Hendricks sustained it, but the point had been made. Amanda called Tom Caldwell, Janet Reeves, and Jim Patterson, the board members who'd been misled. All three testified that Brenda had manipulated the vote, that they'd been shown a fabricated letter, that they'd never seen my actual property survey. On the second day of trial, Judge Hendricks heard closing arguments. Amanda was direct. The evidence is clear. The defendants built on Mr. Chen's private property without permission. They knew there were questions about boundaries. They proceeded anyway. They fabricated documents to manipulate board votes. When caught, they tried to bully Mr. Chen into accepting their illegal construction. This wasn't a good faith mistake. This was deliberate disregard for property rights. We asked the court to award Mr. Chen his full damages plus punitive damages, to send a message that property owners' rights matter. Kenneth Phillips argued for Brenda. Mrs. Holloway made mistakes in judgment, but she believed she was acting for the community's benefit. Punitive damages are inappropriate. Judge Hendricks took less than an hour to deliberate. When she returned, her expression was stern. I've reviewed all the evidence, testimony, and exhibits. This court finds that the defendants committed trespass by building a structure on Mr. Chen's private property without authorization. The evidence shows this was not a good faith mistake. The emails demonstrate that Mrs. Holloway knew there were questions about property boundaries and proceeded anyway. She fabricated documents. She manipulated board votes. She deliberately scheduled construction while Mr. Chen was overseas. Mr. Murphy profited from a contract he voted to approve, creating a clear conflict of interest. Both defendants disregarded Mr. Chen's property rights for their own benefit. The court awards Michael Chen the following: $12,000 in demolition costs, $48,000 in legal fees, $75,000 in punitive damages to be paid jointly by Mrs. Holloway and Mr. Murphy. Total judgment, $135,000. Additionally, Mrs. Holloway and Mr. Murphy are permanently barred from serving on any HOA board in Colorado. This court will not tolerate HOA board members who abuse their positions to violate homeowners' property rights. Brenda sat motionless, her face pale. Dale stared at the table. I felt the tension I'd been carrying for 10 months finally release. 2 weeks later, Brenda and Dale both formally resigned from what remained of their positions. The judgment against them was filed with the county. They had 30 days to pay. The new HOA board led by Tom Caldwell sent me a formal apology and a check for $25,000 as reimbursement for the HOA's portion of the damages. We want to make this right, Tom wrote. What the previous board did was inexcusable. 10 months after coming home to find a garage on my property, justice was finally served. 1 year after I came home from Indonesia to find a garage on my property, I received an email from a stranger in a town 40 miles away. Subject: line, "Thank you for standing up to your HOA." The email was from a homeowner named David Martinez. His HOA had been trying to claim part of his backyard as common area to build a dog park. They'd seen news coverage of my case. David had hired a surveyor, proved the land was his, and the HOA had backed down immediately. "Your case set a precedent. In Colorado," he wrote. "HOS can't just take people's land anymore. Thank you." It was the fourth email like that I'd received in 6 months. My case had made regional news. Homeowner wins $135,000 after HOA builds. Garage on his land ran in the Denver Post. Legal blogs covered it as a cautionary tale about HOA overreach. Property rights organization asked to use my case in their educational materials. Riverside. Meadows HOA was completely transformed. Tom Caldwell had implemented strict reforms. Every construction project now required independent survey verification. Every expenditure over $5,000 needed approval from 3 board members. Financial records were posted online within 24 hours. Board meetings were recorded and available. To all members, the board also passed the Murphy Rule. No board member could vote on any contract where they or their family had a financial interest, named after Dale, though no one said that out loud. Voter turnout at the last election had been 83%. Residents were paying attention now. I'd heard through Jim Patterson that Brenda and Richard had sold their house and moved out of state Arizona or New Mexico. The $135,000 judgment had wiped out most of their savings. Brenda's real estate career in Colorado was over. Dale Murphy's construction business had collapsed. His website was offline. Last anyone heard, he was working as a general laborer for a larger firm. Richard Holloway's law practice survived, but barely. He'd lost several clients after the conflict of interest became public. I didn't feel satisfaction hearing about their struggles. Just ... done. They'd faced consequences. The legal system had worked. It was enough. My property was mine again. Grass had grown back where the garage had been. Trees I'd planted were taking root. By next year, you wouldn't be able to tell anything had been there. I'd taken a new job still. Engineering, but mostly remote work. Shorter trips, more time at home. I'd been traveling to cope with my wife's death, but I couldn't run from grief forever. Time to actually live in the house I owned. Last month, I built a small shed in my backyard, 10 by 12 feet, just big enough for lawn equipment and tools. I'd hired an architect, applied for proper permits, let a surveyor verify it would be. Entirely on my property, 15 feet from all boundary lines. Sent courtesy notices to all my neighbors. I wasn't taking any chances. Construction finished on a Saturday in late September, exactly 1 year after I'd demolished the garage. Jim. Patterson walked over while I was installing shelves. "Shed looks good, Michael. Did you get all the permits?" "Every single one. County permit, HOA, architectural approval, surveyor verification. I even had the utility company mark underground lines 3 times. Jim laughed. "Nobody's going to mess with you after last year. Still better safe than sorry." That evening, I sat on my porch with a beer, looking at my property, all 0.6 acres of it clearly marked, legally mine. With a shed I'd built the right way. I thought about that night I'd come home from Indonesia. The shock of seeing a building that shouldn't exist, the months of fighting, the legal bills, of the trial. It had cost me $85,000 after the judgment was paid. 10 months of stress, countless hours of documentation, but I'd won. Not just in court, but in principle. Property rights matter. You can't just take someone's land because it would be convenient for the community. You can't build on private property without permission. And when you do, there are consequences. Brenda Holloway had learned that lesson the hard way. My phone buzzed. Text from Tom, "Board meeting next week if you want to attend." Voting on landscaping for actual common areas, the ones that are actually common areas this time. I smiled and texted back, "I'll be there." A year ago, I'd avoided HOA involvement. I traveled too much. Didn't care about neighborhood politics, but I'd learned something. When you don't pay attention, people with bad intentions fill the vacuum. Brenda had operated without oversight for years because residents, like me, hadn't bothered to show up. Not anymore. I walked back to my shed, my properly permitted, legally constructed, definitely in my own property shed. I'd come home from Indonesia, expecting to sleep in my own bed and relax. Instead, I'd found a garage on my land, fought a 10-month legal battle, won $135,000, and helped reform an entire HOA. Not exactly the homecoming I'd planned, but I'd do it again. Because some things are worth fighting for, and property rights, the fundamental. Right to own land and control what happens on it is one of them.